Hi BookTube, it's Amy, and we're going to roll on here with another reading from the Anatomy of Bibliomania by Holbrook Jackson. We're on page 93 in this video with a section titled Ephemeral and Shallow Works. To purge the world of literary rubbish will require some monster taming, Hercules, a ruthless Caesar, or a Mussolini. But no persuasion, no terror, no persecution can divert those who hunger and who thirst for scribbling's sake. The scribbling itch is an incurable disease, and Montaigne's common rabble of scribblers and blur papers a constant menace to be circumvented, since cure is beyond hope. It is an ordinary thing for us to account of value those books which have outstripped time, and to press them forward is a prime means of sidetracking the remorseless cataract of daily literature, which is no better than so much incontinently discharged waste paper. But to sift the good from the bad in the daily onset taxes all our wit, and in the end our efforts are noness. A mere flash, a ceremony, a toy, a thing of naught. No use battling against such a stream. All the shouting, the crying, the spluttering of all the times have not arrested it, nor will they, for rubbish is necessary to the profanum vulgus. Light amusement, their prerogative, panis et circenses. Authors hear at length one general cry, tickle and entertain us, or we die. Such ephemeral matter is the chopped straw of the circulating library, or those news sheets, magazines, the trivia of commerce, whether fiction or articles, notes on passing events. Read today, or rather read today, forgotten tomorrow. Sons of a day, just buoyant on the flood, when then numbered with the puppies in the mud. Quoting some lines of poetry from Pope. Thistledown blown hither and thither by the wind, and settling nowhere, or if anywhere, where least wanted, weeds, litter, matter out of place, dust of the mind, as general and as vulgar as the smell. Yet, midst the tide of unpropitious time, quacks advertise and paltry poets rhyme, bookmakers ply their trade, booksellers puff, and urged by avarice vend the vapid stuff. Quoting from the Craniad, which does not have an author listed in the footnote. Nothing so dwarfs the mind as to debauch it by frivolous reading, and by the moral dram drinking of sensational rubbish, or to pamper it with pepnotized pap. But such pernicious stuff, abstracts, abridgments, please the fickle times. Quoting from George Crabbe's The Library. There are books to be perused, says John Atkin, and books to be possessed. Of the former you may find ample store in every subscription library. Such books the world swarms too much with, so that, as Wither says, those that desire knowledge are still kept ignorant. Their ignorance increaseth their affection to vain toys. Their affection makes the stationer to increase his provision of such stuff, and at last you shall see nothing to be sold amongst us but Corantos Bevis of Southampton, or such trumpery. The warehouses are full of quack-solving receipts, false propositions, and artificial rhymings, of which last he ingeniously confesses. They have some of mine there, God forgive me. 'Tis a vicious circle. Dr. Johnson read his Idler, number 85. He's suggesting, Holbrook Jackson is suggesting that we read his Idler, number 85 there. That is in brackets. Dr. Johnson has some such notion when he claims for an ignorant age that it had too many books, and Lord Chesterfield the same when he exhorts his son to throw away none of his time upon those trivial feudal books published by idle or necessitous authors for the amusement of idle or ignorant readers. Such sorts of books swarm and buzz about one every day. Flap them away, he commands. They have no sting. And Harrison had them in mind when he could almost reckon the printing press as among the scourges of mankind. Beneath the word finis in one such stupid book, an unknown wit wrote, "Finis, an error or a lie, my friend. In writing foolish books there is no end," which Sir Thomas Browne stiffly supports. There are too many books in the world, he says, and he would with patience behold the urn and the ashes of the Vatican, could he recover with a few others the Paris leaves of Solomon. It was not a melancholy eudaimon of his own, but the desire of better heads, that, instead of attempting to unite the incompatible differences of religion, they should form a general synod for the benefit of learning, to reduce it, as it lay at first, in a few solid authors, and to condemn to the fire these swarms and millions of rhapsodies, begotten only to distract and abuse the weaker judgment of scholars, and to maintain the trade and mystery of typographers. Good and serious men, lovers of books, scholars, and the like, have always thought as much. There is too much writing and printing. 'Tis an overdone business, and in all times a menace. Were all books, Addison taxeth, reduced to their quintessence, many a bulky author would make appearance in a penny pamphlet, and there would be scarce any such thing in nature as a folio. Millions of volumes would be utterly annihilated, and the works of an age contained on a few shelves, which is no more than Country Patmore argued in our own time when he announced that of the 40 miles of shelves in the museum, 40 feet would contain all the real literature of the world. Fuller argues that foolish pamphlets prove most beneficial to the printers, and he quotes the story of Rabelais, whose printer was utterly undone by printing his solid and serious work concerning physic, and was recompensed when Rabelais wrote his jesting, scurrilous work, which repaired the printer's loss with advantages. So the worst books some knave will still defend. Not that I, and some others, would condemn Rabelais. Possibly the endless multiplication of books makes for contempt, encouraging that bibliophobia which is the common lot. People in general do not willingly read if they have anything else to amuse them, said Dr. Johnson. Mankind, as a rule, detests literature, says Lang. What an inestimable price would a Virgil or a Homer or a Cicero or an Aristotle bear, were their works like a statue, a building, or a picture, to be confined only in one place and made the property of a single person. Yet I will go on and say that if it be true that the public which reads in any sense of the word worth considering is very, very small, and that the public which would feel no lack if all book printing ceased tomorrow is enormous, the production of great books is unaffected. What boots it to complain, as he does, that many of the most valuable books slowly achieve the sale of a few hundred copies, and that if we gathered from all the ends of the British Empire those men and women who regard fine books as a necessity of life, they could be assembled comfortably in the Albert Hall? And a footnote here is saying that is from Gissing's Private Papers of Henry Rycroft, which I have on the shelf back there somewhere. The good bookman is not disturbed if the reading of most men is like a wardrobe of old cloths that are seldom used. He can gnaw his own bone. That there are not many of his kind is no disparagement. With a few fine books he is safe even from fools, for in the presence of great writers they would seek to hide their faults, so Seneca promises, and Montaigne approves. Bibliophiles are not reformers or proselytizers. They are not out to defend or propagate ideas or wisdom. Diffused knowledge immortalizes itself, and only the loveless advocate love. A good book never lacks lovers, and they in turn will reject trivial consolations, ordinary speeches, popular appeals. Known persuasion in this behalf will be of small force, which what can a man say that hath not been said? To what end are such frenetic discourses? You may as soon remove the Matterhorn as alter some man's affection. And though, as Montaigne holds, there are diverse books profitable by reason of their subjects, of which the author reapeth no commendations at all, it is not to be remedied, as my Lord of Verlum hath it, by making no more books, but by making more good books, which, as he supports again, and most wisely, visualizing a beneficent cannibalism like the serpent of Moses might devour the serpent of the enchanters. In all ages there have been those who see naught but frivolity or even evil in romances, plays, novels, and the like. I never heard of any plays fit for a Christian to read, Parson Adams objects, but Cato and the Conscious Lovers. Yet he must own that in the latter there are some things almost solemn enough for a sermon. I never read a novel, says Thoreau. They have so little real life and thought in them. Dibdin records that Ludovicus Vives has strung together in a saucy philippic a long list of popular romances, calling them ungracious books. They are, he protests, books written by idle men and set all upon filth and viciousness. That men delight in them proves that vice pleaseth them so much. There is no shadow of learning in them, and they are full of plain and foolish lies. One killeth 20 himself alone, another killeth 30, another wounded with 100 wounds, and left dead rises up again. And on the next day, made whole and strong, overcometh 2 giants, and then goeth away laden with gold and silver and precious stones. 'Tis madness, he warns us, to have pleasure in such books. There is no wit in them, but a few words of wanton lust, which, bespoken to move her mind with whom they love, if it chance she be steadfast. If they be read for this, make an end of it by making books of bawds crafts. He never heard man say that he liked these books, but those that never touched good books. In Hazlitt's day, only young ladies from the boarding school or milliners' girls read all the new novels that came out. But nowadays, such books are more widely appreciated. Journalism has been denounced and devoured in all ages. It is a common thing among those who would have a definite purpose in reading to rail against the popular press. And, like as not, they are the same that condemns romances and novels, as Thoreau, blessed as they who never read a newspaper, for they shall see nature, and through her, God. And when he was forced to read one of the condemned sheets, he counterbalanced the act with a dose of Herodotus or Strabo. Some objects in newspapers because they compete with more permanent writing. When a nation reads its newspapers, it does not read its books. M. Swann in À la recherche du temps perdu, so In Search of Lost Time, is of the same opinion. The fault I find with our journalism is that it forces us to take an interest in some fresh triviality or other every day, whereas only 3 or 4 books in a lifetime give us anything that is of real importance. They forget, however, that much of our best literature rose from the ranks of journalism. On the other hand, there are some few, as Lord Orrery, the friend of Swift, who finds newspapers a great relief to a man who leads a solitary life. At his country retreat at Marston, he generally reserved them as a feast for night, and passed some of the long evenings speculating on the advertisements over a dish of coffee. By this means he learned who sells the infallible electuary, and many curious things of other lands, and the doings of Stanislaus, and the pronunciation of Polish names. This collection of opinions is wild, and there is inconsistency in several of the varieties, which need not be more than noted, for opinion in good men is but knowledge in the making. To attack them were a waste of time, for they represent a confusion common in one form or another in all periods, and may therefore be looked upon as an idiosyncrasy of the human mind, which cannot affect those who are capable of forming their own tastes. The rest do not count. But I may conclude with some words from Coleridge which indicate that even writers of supreme genius may be afflicted with the same moral squint. Coleridge would not even dignify the reading of these rejected books with the name of reading. Call it rather, he advises, a sort of beggarly daydreaming, during which the mind of the dreamer furnishes for itself nothing but laziness and a little mawkish sensibility. While the whole material and imagery of the dose is supplied ad extra by a mental camera obscura manufactured at the printing office, which, pro tempore, fixes, reflects, and transmits the moving phantasms of one man's delirium so as to people the bareness of 100 other brains afflicted with the same trance of suspension, of all the common sense and all definite purpose. It is but an attempt to reconcile 2 contrary yet coexisting propensities of human nature, indulgence of sloth and hatred of vacancy. The reading of such books he classes with gaming, swinging or swaying on a chair or gate, spitting over a bridge, smoking, snuff-taking, tete-a-tete quarrels after dinner between husband and wife, quoting word by word all the advertisements of the daily advertisers in a public house on a rainy day, etc., etc., quoting from Coleridge's Bibliographia Literaria. To this day I answer that although those who read thus lose greatly thereby, for they take the shadow for the substance, yet 'tis their fashion to do so. They did it, they like it, and no great harm comes to it. Perchance they are thus saved from a worse evil themselves. Yet none will say that they are wise who prefer a dull and shallow print to a work composed of all graces, elegancies, imagination, and absolute peace, for beautiful words are, in a real and special sense, the light of thought. So there you have it, sharing the various opinions about novels, plays, quote, ephemeral and shallow works. And can you imagine how offended the modern reader would be if someone were to come on this platform and compare, I don't know, their reading of a romance novel or a YA novel to spitting over a bridge, snuff-taking, or a tete-a-tete quarrel after dinner with your wife. What an opinion that is. And I think we can see here that although Holbrook Jackson is conveying these views to us, he certainly doesn't seem to believe them. He seems to be of the opinion, subtly, that reading, whatever it is most likely to do more good than harm, regardless of what it is that you're reading, whether it be ephemeral or, as he says, shallow, whether it be a newspaper, a novel, or a serious work. But we'll end it there. The next section here, almost 100 pages in, we're on page 98 here, is titled Against Idle and Desultory Reading. And I see some things underlined here. And I don't know if it was me or not. The underlining looks kind of like mine because the lines are not perfectly straight. The way I hold my pen ends up dipping the lines a little bit now and then. But there is this absolutely perfect check mark next to the title over here, which is something I've been known to do in larger works like this, where I want to signify that, yes, I've read that one. But the check mark seems a little bit too perfect to be mine. So either I was having a really good check mark writing day, or that's someone else's check mark and perhaps someone else's underlines too, and they've got the same unsteady penmanship that I do. But we'll leave it here because we're at the end of today's section, and I will see you in the next video.